Going to try to do some cool things here. Thinking about some cool things at least. If I was to go on live and tell you all about intervals, distances between notes, wouldn't that be great? Is there a possibility that you could learn if there's a distance between two notes that you could see it instantly, that you could remember the sight of it? Like to make yourself learn something, learn in groups of letters called intervals. Those intervals are distances between two items, two notes. Trying to define intervals is not easy when you're trying to just tell anyone off the street, hey, this is what an interval is. But if you think about it, you can. Because it's a distance between two things. Like from me to you is an interval of distance. So we can just transpose it to the keyboard. We'll have a distance from one key to the next and call it an interval. A hopping, a solid, a rocking, but mainly a distance. I'm describing what you can do with it. You can rock it. You can play it solid. You can play it uneven. Do-dee, short, long, short, long, short, long. You can repeat it. You can play both hands. Any distance between two notes is an interval. But two notes is called an interval. Gong. Why is this so important? Because it's a measurement. It's a distance between a beginning note and another note. Two notes at the same time, that's an interval. Two notes going from one to the second, jumped an interval. So it's not only at the same time, it can be back and forth between that interval. And I still do not know whether it's held this way. I think it is so you can reach on top in tune, or no, it's held this way because it's a label like this. So I am holding the guitar the right way. See, I really do not know anything about guitar. One thing that's interesting is like people say, well, Jim, you always reference stuff to the guitar. Why do you reference stuff to the guitar? And I'm like, well, because it was the beginning of the music. And they're like, what do you mean? Like, well, people didn't just roll a grand piano, big wooden keys like this with glued tops higher to make them higher on the sharp notes. They didn't just roll a huge thing out there that weighed 600 pounds into the middle of the desert when in a tribe, when they were singing around singing circles, singing songs. So I was thinking, well, of course they weren't. And then I was thinking, well, what did they make? And they made out of, barrels and light bamboo or bark or pine. No, not pine, but it'd be like hardwood, some kind of like really beautiful rosewood, or I don't know what kind of wood, maple or something like that. They would bend it and make it into gourds or whatever. A gourds, there you go. And then they attached gradually a neck to it. And then they attached a string on top of it. At first, it was probably just one string. And then they attached more and more strings alongside of it, parallel to it, and they could play intervals. They could play two notes at once because they have more than one string. That's the very beginning of music. This then evolved all the way to this pattern. It's almost like a organized, high intellectual version of this. Because this set the measurement. This just now gives you a graph to deal with it. The graph being about sounds of distance all the time. Not knowing exactly which way it is, I think it's this way. Or no, it would be this way. The guitar is basically the beginning of music because it defined measurement by its existence of the fret system. Each fret is what we call 1/2 step. Each time I slide my finger from one, this is a fret. The next fret is 1/2 step. That is so simple, you would think, but what's cool is you can distance it further using a 1/2 step measuring method. The half-step measuring method is this. The first thing is half-step. Okay, we all know that. One slide of one half-step. Next is one more half-step. Why not go one half-step and one half-step? In other words, but I'm going to jump now from one fret, skipping over one fret, to the next fret. Two half-steps. That began what were called intervals. And this is where the keyboard comes in. This melded into this because the keyboard provided a closer, look how stretched apart. And I know that in guitar playing that you use different strings and stuff like that. I just don't know anything about guitar, but in keyboard, which I do know something about, there is so greatness in intervals because they're bookended by an octave. Remember that each space on the guitar that you're moving is a half step, and that's a distance measurement that is related to whether you're on a letter side or a sharp side on the keyboard. Then you can start making distance in your brain, or intervals. Not only are you playing a melody, which would be a one single note, but now you can harmonize with it. You can make great things with it, like intervals. What is an interval? Two notes at one time. One note at one time could be considered a melody or a bass line. Melody or bass line, one note at one time. Two notes at one time? Oh, you got an interval. What is an interval? Not only is it solid, played at the same time, but it can be broken, rocking. It doesn't have to be played at the same time. It can be a hop that you go in an interval. Oh, I just went a fourth. I just went a minor third. I just went a second. I just went a major seventh. Where you're talking about these half steps become where we are on what letter. We're going to go to this interval. We're going to go to this distance, to the next distance from this letter, and it's going to be the correct letter. You know why? You know why? Because we know measurement, and measurement is half stepping. We know that if we're touching each other, that's a half step. So I know now to learn some intervals. We're going to learn the one, which is the number that we're starting on. The number is then also that I'm saying what is two. After one comes two. Well, two is a whole step. We move one whole step away from one, we've gone to two. And that two, by the way, is a distance referenced in an interval. Two. Hey, do a second. Kabling! Two notes together. E to F sharp. One note in between you all. It's not the one right next to it. It's not a half step. It's a whole step. A two is a whole step. So you have to make sure you have something in between. You have to have something in between. A fret in between. A note in between. Whether it's a letter note or a sharp note, you have to have it in between. If you're going from G sharp to A sharp, you have to have A in between because you need a note between. If you're going from a sharp to a letter, you have to have, like from A sharp to C, you have to have B in between because you need a note in between because you're going a whole step. And what I'm talking about is where you're going to two. You're going a second. You're going an interval. Okay? Intervals. Great. Intervals with me? Okay. Now. Oh, sorry. This is a ding. This is a ding, and this is a gong. Together. Tonight in studioE KEYSongs, we're still in intervals. 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 The things that go distance between one another. The things that started from the number one. And that was the beginning of your interval. It was the first interval that you learned, was one. And numbers, letters and numbers. That's what you want in your brain, to really flow onto the keyboard, to really make it go fast, so you know really what you're doing. So you can talk to people too, musically. You can turn to the person next to you and play, hey, hey, play a third off of that. Hey, play a fourth off of that. You're naming intervals. Hey, play a second off of that. Hey, play an M3 off of that. Hey, play a major 7 off of that. Hey, play a 6th off of that. Hey, play a 5th off of that. Hey, plus 4 off of that. Hey, play a 8 off of that. An octave. The same note with the same note. An interval of an 8. studioE, in the realm of studioE thinking, I don't go beyond 8. I stay in 8. But I learned every interval in between. except for the half. That's the one that's touching right here. It's touching. One. It is the one that is right next door, whether it's a sharp or whether it's a letter that could be E, F, E, F, E, F, or B, C, B, C, E, F, E, F, B, C, B, C, E, F, E, F, B, C, B, C, E, F, B, C, E, F, B, C, B, C. It could be E, F, E, F, or B, C, B, C. And still, hold on a second. It still could be higher, because A to F sharp goes higher to a 2 from E. That's a second. The reason I'm saying that, E to F sharp, is it goes left from 1, which is E, to right, F sharp. Goes right higher, goes higher up, but right goes higher. So in your brain, you have to think, I have to transpose my brain to when I see a letter going higher, I have to go right. When I see a letter going lower, I have to go left. Left, down. If I went down a whole step from E, and I wrote D lower, underneath where E was on the letter, wrote a letter E, y'all. Then underneath it or above it or whatever, I was talking about F sharp before, I wrote above that E, F sharp, and below that E, a D, because it went down a whole step, a negative down. Okay, anyway, so I went down below root one whole step. Point being, if you know your letters and your distances and what they look like, do you know what every 2 looks like? That sounds so easy. Note in between. But play them. Okay, all in a row by playing chromatically. In other words, the bottom note, just moving half step up and feeling your way half step is fine. But try playing them letter-wise, all the letters, and then all the sharps. What do you mean? Well, I'm talking about the low note being your first note, right? So let's say you're in sharps. You're starting on C sharp. Your low note is first. Then you move your thumb to the next possible sharp, which is D sharp. You move your note to the next possible sharp, which is F sharp. You move your thumb to the next possible sharp, which is G sharp. You move your thumb to the next possible sharp, which is A sharp. Anyways, as you move your thumb to each of those sharps, can you whole step this way, right to the right? Can you whole step and quickly play every whole step, every 2 of every 1? This is a 1. This is a notebook. Oh, this is a 2. Can you play every 2 together? Plomp, 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 plomp. Not chromatically, not crawling half-step wise. Can you play every 2 jumping sharp to sharp to sharp to sharp to sharp? Can you play them quickly? Watch. It's not easy, but it's great sight practice. It's sight, 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 sight. Can I see that in between note quickly? Can I see where I'm jumping with my thumb? Practicing on the sharps gives you 10 times faster learning ability of sight, because that's the basis of seeing letters in the first place. My note as a half step I'm playing would be like every single fret on the guitar. But the cool thing about the guitar is when it first was invented, probably only had 1 string. But by many inventions later, the thing had 6 strings, or sometimes 12 strings, or 18 strings, or whatever kind of string instruments you're playing. I don't even know how many strings are on a piano. I should know. This is the studioE KEYSongs, all about the keyboard, but it's mostly about keyboards and pianos. So, there were 6 strings that ended on a guitar. They were tuned in intervals apart. They weren't all the same pitch. They weren't unisons of 1s. They were intervaled apart. And those intervals, many times between strings, are 4ths. A magic thing that we all begin. And the first and the last string is an octave apart, an 8. So there's a 5 and an 8 already built into it. There's a 3 in there too. There's a 3, but there's a lot of 4s. And then it turns out that because of the harmonics, the way those 4s are tuned, the way those 6 strings are tuned, that turns out that 5ths are equally great. Like doing this, my head is the interval in between. My fingers actually are. But don't forget, we always have the octave going on. It is so important to remember we are talking in these blocks. No matter what letter I speak of, we also know every single interval in between. How can I ever learn all those letters? How can I ever learn all those letters? This is how. Repeat. studioE rhymes with repeat. Repeat over and over and over and over again. That's what music does. These do not move. These stay the same letters. Today was 1800 years ago and will hopefully be 1800 years from now. These are the piano or pianoforte or excellent whatever designed harpsichord or whatever it's called, way long time. I don't know the history, I'm sorry, of the keyboard, but it's wonderful, wonderful design to have. I just realized it. The analog on this. Let's read. Hold on. Should I do a little analog? Hold on. Should I? Nah. It's just not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's other dimensions that squish apart when you add a half and a half and a half and a half and a whole. Actually, you're adding a half and a half and a half. You're going by half, and I'm adding another half, and adding another half, and adding another half, and I'm adding another half. I keep stretching wider and wider from wherever I start. Like if I started on E, and then I went to F, okay, that'd be a half. If I go to F sharp, that's 2 halves, or a whole. But anyways, I'm just going to keep squishing. I'm going to keep enlarging my fingers by half steps. I go to an M3, another half step, I go to a 3, another half step, I go to a 4, another half step, I go to a +4, another half step, I go to a 5, another half step, I go to a +5, another half step, I go to a 6, another half step, I go to a 7, another half step, I go to a major 7, and then there's that 8 I was talking about. But there is 12 different other possible, including 1, counting 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 different possible intervals in between the